The Frontside Disaster. This is a fun little transition trick where you roll up the ramp, turn frontside 180, and land with the middle of your board on the coping. This is a fun trick to try if you're looking into getting into stalls on transition. And if you're like me and you suck at riding down transition, fakie, or switch, then I would definitely recommend trying to learn this one. So the main parts to this trick are rolling up the transition, and as you near the edge, you slightly press down on the tail and turn your body frontside. And as your back wheels come up and over the edge, you press down to stall. And then from there, you slightly press down on the nose to come back in. For the foot positioning of this trick, you can basically keep your feet like you would when you drop in. You can keep a fairly wide stance with your front foot near the front of your bolts. And your back foot should be on the tail, but not too far towards the edge. I like to keep mine near the pocket so I can maintain some control. Some things you should know before learning this trick are how to drop in, how to do frontside kick turns, and just being slightly comfortable riding up and down transition. Besides that, you should have a pretty good grasp on flat ground frontside 180s. And also learning frontside reverts can really help too, because in the end you actually don't really have to pop this trick too much. So the first thing I would recommend doing is dropping in a few times and just doing some frontside pivots. This should help you get a basic feel for what it's like to turn your body frontside while rolling up a ramp, and also it'll help you start using your shoulders and your hips to turn your body. So you can pretty much break this trick down into two parts. There's the 180 up into the stall, and then there's the actual dropping back in part when your front wheels are hanging off the edge and you're standing up on your board. So this is one of those tricks where I recommend just starting off by going for it and seeing what happens, and then you can sort of work backwards and fix any mistakes. So before we get too much further into actually practicing the trick on transition, I'm going to go over a few practice steps that you can do on flat just to get a little more comfortable with things. And the first one is just practicing doing a frontside 180 into a disaster on a curb. And the reason I think this one helps is you can practice turning your body and seeing how much you have to rotate. And also it gets you used to landing and standing in that position with your back trucks up on top and your front wheels slightly dipped down. So you can practice just doing that a few times, and you don't need to try to come out of it yet. That'll be the next step. So for this step, you can either do the 180 into these, or you can just set your board up in that position. And you're basically just going to be pressing down on your front wheels a little bit, and then pushing the board forward just a little bit, and pulling your back trucks up and over. So those are just a couple steps to kind of get you used to the feeling, and now we can get back to the ramp. So the first step would be rolling up and turning the 180, and just trying to get your board up and into that stall, whether or not you're on top of it. This might be a really awkward feeling at first, and there's a few things you'll probably notice that are happening. The first is that you're slightly over-rotating and your board is ending up a little crooked. And to work on this, I'd say really focus on how much you're swinging your shoulders and your hips, and also focus on your back foot. After it's cleared the coping, you want to be pressing down on it so that your momentum is stopped by the friction between the back wheels and the top of the ramp. The other thing you might notice that's happening is that when you get the center of your board on the coping, you're actually starting to slide and then slipping out. And the fix for this would be to make sure that you're not coming up the ramp at an angle, but rather going pretty straight on. And another thing I'd like to point out is that while you can pop into these really high if you want to, as you can see from mine, I barely get the back trucks over the coping. And for me, a lot of the times it actually feels less like a frontside 180 and more like I'm doing a frontside revert. And my back foot is actually scooping into the board more than it's popping, almost like I'm doing a frontside 180 no comply. So at this point, if you're comfortable riding on transition and you can at least do the frontside pivots, then once you've taken care of these few problems I said and maybe done the practice steps on flat, you should be able to at least start getting into these stalls. And so the final step is dropping back in from that disaster position. This part isn't actually as hard as it may seem, and it's pretty similar to what we practice on the curb, where you just press down on your front trucks a little bit, and then your board should start to slide forward, and you just need to make sure that the back wheels clear the coping without hanging up. The only thing you want to watch out for in this step is that you don't press down on the front of your nose too hard, and also depending on how fast you drop back in after getting into the stall, you may have some of the momentum of your body turning frontside still in your shoulders, which may cause you to sort of loop out at the bottom. So if you've gotten all the individual steps down, then it's just a matter of putting them all together. Make sure that you're comfortable riding transition just a bit and doing frontside pivots. You can get your frontside 180s and frontside reverts down on flat. If you want to, you can do the practice steps I said on a curb. And then finally, if you're actually trying it on transition, just watch out for those few things I said. Try not to over-rotate, don't come up the ramp at too much of an angle, and focus more on getting your board and body to rotate rather than popping a high 180. So hopefully you can put all these things together and turn it into a frontside disaster. So this was just a quickie how-to I made for one of the only tricks I know how to do on transition. I'm actually really bad at skating transition, but I figured that if I could do it, it shouldn't be too hard for a lot of you. So hopefully this helped a little, and if you have any specific questions about this trick or any others, you can ask down in the comments. And besides that, I'd like to thank my awesome Patreon pledgers for keeping it real. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.